Hi everyone, I hope you're having an amazing day. With the relaunch of konohealth.com yesterday, I thought that I should make a new video. One that is very long overdue, and that's the one on mnemonics. So if you are my student, you know how obsessed I am with mnemonics. And if you are just taking the pharmacy cert in general, you should know what mnemonics are and you should be using them. So we're going to get into today on some different techniques that you can use to memorize information in your pharmacy class, as well as other classes or things that you'll do in life. So we're starting off strong with a way to memorize all your top 200 drugs. So in pharmacy, we need to memorize the top 200. That can be really challenging because a lot of these drugs, the words aren't really words. So this can help you memorize a new language or our drug language. And it is called the keyword method. So what this does is it takes a word that we're not familiar with and it helps us to connect it to a word that we are familiar with. Your brain likes to not have to build new connections. It likes to kind of branch its connections off of things it already knows. And this allows us to do that. So it allows us to memorize quicker and it allows us to memorize for longer. So I'm going to give you 3 examples that I use with the keyword method. And then I'm going to give you a minute to think of the drug that you really try to memorize and are really having a difficult time with. And I'm going to give you a minute to try to make a keyword mnemonic for this drug. Example 1, we have listen, which sounds to me like lisinopril, to your principal, which sounds like Prinavil. So when I think listen to your principal, I think of lisinopril and Prinavil. This helps me remember the brand to generic, which is an ACE inhibitor. ACE inhibitors are for hypertension. So when I think of listening to your principal, I think of this is probably said in a very high stress environment. And if the student maybe is in trouble and listens to their principal, maybe this can help reduce some stress. So I think reducing stress, I think hypertension helps me not only connect brand generic, but also to its indication and therefore kind of class. Number 2 that we're going to go over is, personally, I hate driving. It is so stressful for me. So to me, taking the metro or public transport, which reminds me of metropolol, is a lot lower pressure or low pressor and is better for my heart, reducing my hypertension. Third example is next time, which reminds me of Nexium, it's on me, which reminds me of esomeprazole. So think about how people typically say this at restaurants, and that restaurants are where people may experience symptoms of GERD, which is another way of saying acid reflux, which Nexium helps treat. Okay, so this helps with general words. I told you guys to think about the word that you are trying to memorize that are struggling with. So right now, I'm going to give you guys a minute to think of a mnemonic to help memorize that word. It can either be memorize the brand to generic, or it can be memorizing the drug to its class or indication. So 1 minute, no cheating. Let's do this. Okay, welcome back. I hope everyone at least got that one word in with their mnemonics. If you got more words, awesome job to you, but at least if you got one, I am so proud of you. Now we're going to go over some different mnemonic techniques to memorize lists or processes. And if it wasn't clear enough already, I'm not going to test you guys on the vocab of this. I just want to give you guys different tools that you can use to memorize things with. So you're not going to have to memorize, oh, this is an acronym, but I want you guys to know that you can use acronyms to memorize. So an acronym is when you take the first letter of each word of a saying or process and you just memorize that. So one way I use acronyms is to memorize my top drugs for SSRIs, which is a drug used for depression. So it doesn't really have a good common ending, so it's just helpful to memorize the actual drugs. And there's only a few drugs that I believe will be on the cert test, and that is Celexa, Lexapro, Paxil, Prozac, and Zoloft. Those are all the brand names. So in order to memorize all those brand names, I just remember CLPPZ. And those are my acronyms for them. Sometimes acronyms are difficult to memorize on their own, so we can add some other techniques to them to help make it a little easier. So one of the techniques is chunking. So for instance, Roy G. Biv was an acronym for the different colors of the rainbow, but chunked together, you can say Roy G. Biv. Makes it a little easier. You could also do something called make an acrostic, which is making a saying out of your acronym, which is my personal method to do when I'm trying to memorize a list or information. So for example, we have the acronym of PEMDAS, which, as you guys know in math class, we say, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Then we have the acronym of KHDBDCM, which the acrostic would be King Henry died by drinking chocolate milk, to do metric conversions. And then the acronym of LCDM, the acrostic would be Lucky Cows Drink Milk. And that's how I have my students memorize 50, 100, 500, and 1,000 with Roman numerals. You can also chunk not just with acronyms, but you could chunk, if you have a long list or long set of processes, you could chunk by categories. So that could make it helpful for some people as well. And if all these techniques aren't working for you, you could create a rhyme or song. Personally, I think that takes a little bit more time than the other techniques we went over, but do what works for you. And that is all I had today. So just to recap, I think that if you are memorizing just words, I think that the keyword method is fantastic. I think that if you are doing processes or lists, I think that you could use an acronym, you could chunk, or you can use an acrostic. If that's not all working, rhyming and song can be a great strategy. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I hope these techniques helped, and please do not hesitate to get into contact with me if you have any additional questions. Bye.